What's happening, everybody? It's been a couple nights since I last threw a stream up, and there's some reasons behind it. Long and the short is I lost a good friend, unfortunately, and I've been taking the last couple nights to kind of reflect on a couple things and figure out how I'm going to get myself up to his memorial service, and I got all those details worked out. And then aside from that, I've just been working on getting some stuff set for the bamboos and AMSs and a few other crazy different things. But yeah, I just actually had a print finish. We're going to pull that off here in a second. But what we have on the workbench right now is actual like dehydration units for each one of the AMSs. And so I've been putting off getting a filament dehydration system through desiccant packets set up for all my AMSs. And I need like 2 more AMSs, surprisingly, for the bamboos. And I got to get those hooked up and wired up and everything else. And I got a couple other things that are planned for future videos and whatnot. But yeah, so it's been a rough couple nights for me. But we're getting back into the swing of things, and then see how we can progress and get back into streaming and get these videos out. But just wanted to kind of showcase some of that stuff. So, and if you want to see like a full build plate of things, I'm going to pan the camera over. And so coming off of Bamboo 1, Bamboo 2 has really been working on just some testing and parameters, and it's like, that's a full build plate right there. And that's all dehydration systems that are going to get set inside. And so these are just desiccant pods for the AMSs. And they're already starting to detach from the build plate because it's starting to cool. And these are just printed in Matter Hackers Build PLA with the E3D high flow for the Bamboo printer. I'm going to change that camera back over. The workbench, we're going to start post-processing these. So I did print all these with a brim, just because it was kind of recommended with people having issues with print failures or collisions or the like. And so post-processing these things does take a little bit of time, just to warn you if you do get into printing it. And I got to get better about, putting links to the things that I'm printing onto the chats and whatnot. But these things are crazy, and the tolerances are very finite. But it's like I've printed 6 of them so far and completely loading up a build plate. And of course I'm running the Bamboo texture PEI because that's like I prefer to have the capability of using QR codes for automatic calibration for the printer. I did increase the cubic flow rate with the E3D high flow nozzles, and so it's like I'm pushing, I want to say 29, so I was kind of conservative on it compared to like other people that have run testing with the E3D high flow for the Obsidian X. This build plate back in. Come on. Alright, so I'm going to get some more prints going here in a few minutes. And then I've been toying around with getting some other things set up for Scott over at Gamecraft Brewing Company, because it's like I know he wants to get some tap handles produced, and I've been playing around with a couple different designs and changing some of the designs up and working on a few different aspects of it, and trying to get it all printed as one piece versus having like magnetics without having too much waste material put out there. And so I'm playing around with a couple different things in my time as I've had available. And then I've been working with a couple other clients on getting some other projects off the ground. With some good opportunities moving forward for prototyping, testing, developing, and a few other things outside of work, because it's like I do most of my 3D design stuff here at the house. So, and I'd like to see some of those things kind of come to fruition. But for right now, we're in a good spot. And so, if you guys know me from LinkedIn, I've put a couple posts out there And yeah, there's been a couple rough days and a couple rough nights, but that's okay. But yeah, we're just sipping on some beer and then kind of getting to work. And so we're going to get into post-processing a few of these desiccant packet holders, and then we're actually going to start filling them tonight and then getting these ready to be installed into the 4 AMSs that I got hooked up to Bamboo One. But if you're very careful, and you can just peel these things off with very little post-processing required. I should kind of peel it off. Now, granted, I have no idea where I put my deburring tool. My deburring tool is somewhere here in the garage. And just took a second to go kill a spider, because I leave the garage door open at night sometimes just to get some airflow through here, because man, it gets toasty in the garage with all the 3D printers running and it being an enclosed space without having the garage door open and the side access open. So usually I open those up in the evening just to get some extra airflow in. But yeah, I'm excited to get these things up and running, because I've had some issues with some of the filament that I've been running, but generally it's actually, I only run like PLA and ABS. I don't really run any of the PETGs. But look at that tolerance, just like one lid with one unit, and that one lid with one unit, just right after just slipping them apart, that lid just flows on seamlessly. And so each one comes with 5 desiccant holders, and I printed out these bottom trays to fit in those. So it's like realistically each one's going to have 7 desiccant holders. And I've got a tub of desiccant that I'm going to fill all these with wherever I put it. It's around here somewhere. I don't know where I don't remember where I put it, but we're going to start filling these things up tonight and then get them ready to be put in for use. And so that's why I've got them arrayed right here. I personally have 5 AMSs, and I plan on probably picking up at least one more. So I've got one bamboo that's running 16 colors, which equals 4 AMSs for that one bamboo. And then my 2 other bamboos, one's only set up to run 3 kilo spools right now, but I want to get that changed over. And so there's some interesting stuff that came out, and I've been doing a lot of research on the forums, because it's like my AMS hub, as you guys may have seen in one of the previous videos, that I actually had to go and resolder the control board for the AMS because the connector pin for the 4-pin cable failed, and it failed miserably, where 2 of the pins became completely desoldered from the board, and that's with like not removing the cable at all. It was just, I don't know if it was a manufacturer defect with the board or if it was some other issue. But, you know, it was outside the manufacturer warranty period of like 12 months, and so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and work on resoldering it. So I picked up a new soldering kit, I picked up a soldering workstation, and resoldered the connections, put it back in, and I haven't had any issues with it since. And so, but reading into a lot of the details about it is, I know that there's people that are out there that aren't running the AMS hub itself at all. They're just running the stack and the factory AMS buffer assembly and just daisy chaining 4 AMSs to that, which seems to work just fine. I haven't tested it quite yet, or actually no, I did test it, but I didn't run filament through it. And so it's the only thing I can think of that's like a significant difference between the AMS hub and the AMS buffer, is that the AMS hub has 4 filament sensors and some additional circuitry in it. Aside from that, it's like functionally the same, question mark. And so my other 2 bamboos, if I start running daisy chain AMSs, I'm going to start looking at, you know, maybe splitting it up between the 5 AMSs I have, and once I get a 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th or how many I decide to run across all the bamboos, I want to be able to control that filament and not have any issues moving forward. And so yeah, I'm excited to test that out and see how that's going to go, running the AMS buffer versus the AMS hub. And so the AMS hub, the only thing that I really see is that it allows for the automatic like fill in for 4 different ports of entry into the AMS buffer. But I picked up a couple things from Bamboo, and the things that I picked up from Bamboo are these little guys, and that is the 4-way just stock. And so it's like I've seen like lots of people going out and printing their own like 4-way splitter or 2-way splitter, and it's like I wanted to, you know, if I go the route of the buffer assembly of just running the factory Bamboo one with 4 inlet ports, that way it has appropriate breakover angle. I've heard that a lot of people have had fantastic success going this route because it reduces a lot of the retraction issues or failure to retract or failure to feed issues that are caused by the factory pathing for the filament on the AMS hub. And so if it reduces some of those errors, I mean, that's a monkey off of my back, because oh man, the number of times that I have a retraction issue or a filament breaking off somewhere in the filament pathing between the AMS unit and the AMS hub, and it always seems to be right after the AMS hub just because of that elongated path for it versus, you know, that little 4-way splitter. And the buffer assembly removes a lot of those 2-step processes for filament detection. And so I think that's where it runs into issue, is that additional sensor that's in there is throwing an error. And so, yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how well that's going to go. So right now what I'm really doing is I'm just arranging a few more of these setups that I got for the desiccant packets. But once these are done, I plan on getting back into some multicolor printing for the brewery, and then also getting into some more printing. I did take advantage of a sale that Bamboo was having for some bamboo filament, because it's like I've been running pretty much exclusively the Matter Hackers branded materials. And then since I've swapped over to the E3D high flow nozzles, I've been playing around with a couple different filaments and filament settings and dialing some of those in and actually calibrating the printer for those filaments, and that's using Orca Slicer with the calibration setup that they have. Yeah, and so I've actually had really good results with the E3D high flow with some of the adjusted settings for the increased flow ratio for the E3D high flow. And so all of these components that you see in front of you right now on the workbench, these are all printed on a Bamboo, and this was Bamboo 1, because that's the one that I initially had the E3D high flow installed on, and I've got a few of them now for each one of the printers. And that E3D high flow, it doesn't really help with this because there's so many small meticulous moving parts where it's like, I'm sure the Bamboo factory hot end probably could have done it, but it did save about 6 hours of print time between the 2 different slices for the factory hot end versus the high flow hot end. And that's with printing a full build plate, and a full build plate was 3 of these units at a time. And then I also dialed in Bamboo number 2 that's on the workbench over here with a E3D high flow. And after a couple quick calibrations, I went ahead and just started printing out these other desiccant trays, and had some really, really fantastic results. First try, no issues, running about 29 millimeters per second cubed for the flow rate. And so, yeah, really, really happy with it so far. And so I've got for these guys, this center hole right here, this is designed to hold a humidity sensor, and so the humidity and temperature sensor. And so I've got a 6-pack of those on order, and I've got 6 of these units printed out. Lid, that one's done. And so I'll work the install of these once I get that those humidity sensors in-house and ready to go. And so I printed 6 just because it's like I anticipate buying another AMS at some point. I'm hoping that I can get like a used one for cheap from the company, the company that I work for being Matter Hackers. We've got quite a few from the print farm that are in use, and like the condition of it, I don't care. I'll just remanufacture one if need be to get it back up into service. And it's like I'm using my thumbnail deburring system here. I've had a couple pieces of filament get underneath my thumbnail from time to time, which really kind of sucks, but hey, whatever. Such is life. And I'm sure we've all kind of had those things happen. But yeah. So the testing that I'm doing for GameCraft right now is, and I'll pull that out here in a second once I get some more of these things post-processed, is originally the tap handle that was designed where it's like there was magnetic plates to hold the discipline of the beer, there was magnetic plates to hold the actual beer name itself with the can art, and then there was a magnetic topper. And the magnetic topper, from feedback from the brewery, is the magnetic topper. It's like, and I found myself praying victim to this too here at the house, is when I want to go pull beer off the tap, I end up pulling the top of the tap handle, which is where the logo's at, which is only affixed by magnets, and so I pull the logo off the top of the tap, and I could see that level of frustration starting to come through from the brewery side, and so Scott asked me to go ahead and try to affix it. And the problem is when I did the initial design for the affixed version, and I've got one printed out next to me, the affixed version would have to go through 191 filament changes to get the coloring correct. And so I was like, that's completely not feasible. I don't want to have that much material waste. And it was a lot of material waste that was happening with it. And so I started playing around tonight on working on a redesign of it in order to get it set so I can minimize the amount of material waste by only having 2 filament changes, and then, well, maybe a few filament changes. I don't know. There'll probably be a couple. And then I got to figure out whether I want to run it on the bamboo filament or whether I want to run on Matter Hackers filament. I've got a good amount of both here at the house. So, but yeah, getting back to some of the sales stuff, is there was Prime Day deals, and so I picked up some of my favorite ABS filament, which is the eSun ABS Plus. Really like that filament for ABS. I did end up picking up during a bamboo sale some bamboo ABS and some bamboo PLA Basic, because I like the PLA Basic because it's very easy, and then trying to benchmark it against like the Matter Hackers brand of material to see exactly where I can get flows and see if I can get comparable results out of the Matter Hackers material that I can with the bamboo, because it's like the bamboo, the stock profile with the bamboo filament and the factory bamboo 0.4 hot end on the X1 carbon, they're pushing about 21 millimeters per second cubed of filament, versus when we're looking at the E3D high flow with Matter Hackers brand material, I'm pushing now 29 to 32 millimeters per second cubed of material. And so a lot of those have just been working calibrations and detailed slicer settings and filament settings inside Orca Slicer, and then transcribing from Orca Slicer back into Bamboo Studio. And I've had pretty good results with that so far. And it's like, I'm in the debate process of just going direct over and sticking with Orca Slicer, or if I want to stick with Bamboo Studio, because even though Orca Slicer is a fork of Bamboo Studio, I want to make sure that I'm going with the least painful option between the two. And I really need to find my deburring knife. It's just rather annoying at times when I'm pulling these off of the brim. But yeah, neither here nor there. I'll survive. But the tolerances on this stuff is great. It's like, these prints came out fantastic. And I know that there's been a lot of people that were saying that's like, hey, they had collisions. And again, it's like, I don't care the material. It's like, this is just PLA. I'm going to fill it all up with desiccant, and then whether or not there's issues with absorption of moisture with PLA or ABS. It's like, it's anybody's guess. And I'm not a material scientist, so I couldn't tell you the actual hygroscopic properties for each one of the materials, but I know that moisture is bad, and right now in California, here specifically in Orange County, it's really, really humid. In my garage, it is very humid at the moment. But I did have a bunch of filament end up failing, and the only thing I can probably attribute it to is that I respooled it from a 3 kilo spool to a 1 kilo spool, and that additional binding temperature, probably with a little bit of moisture, caused the filament to actually fail. And it failed pretty much multiple times over to the point where it's like I had a full 1 kilo of red that was just garbage. But yeah, the model file I'm working with did come with this handy dandy little funnel system with some tongue and groove, so it can slide right onto each one of these little adapters for each one of these desiccant holders. So as you can see, it's just going to pop right into place. And then, of course, I would just run the fill in there, pop that off, move on to the next one. I printed out 2 of them in case one of them broke, or I set it down somewhere in the garage and I completely forgot where I put it, because that never happens. But I don't really have a good home for them either right now, so it's kind of anybody's guess as to where I would put one and what I would do with it. Yeah, just a little bit more post-processing. Get these things out. And again, had some really, really good results between 2 different batches of our Matter Hackers branded silver stuff. And as you can see, there's some slight color difference and variation between each one of these prints. And it could be some of the lighting also at the same time. But with that amount of desiccant going into each one of the AMSs, I've seen people get their humidity down to like almost like 0.5, but I don't know what that technically means. And then I'm using some color changing desiccant that I picked up from Amazon, just because there was a sale on it, so it was cheap. And with that sale on it being cheap, I picked up about 5 pounds of it, which should last me for a while, especially because it's desiccant. When you get it, when the color changes or whatever, and it's absorbed as much moisture as it can, you can literally just, I don't recommend using it in your household toaster oven or microwave, because, you know, I don't want that material off-gassing to happen inside of something that's going to be carrying food. But if you have an extra microwave, or if you have an extra toaster oven laying around just for the purpose of like drying filament, or even putting it in a filament dehydrator or a food dehydrator, and then getting it to change back to its original color, so you can just go ahead and recycle and reuse those desiccant packets. There's lots of capability and lots of opportunity just to recycle and reuse desiccant, because why not? It's like I've been researching into making a grinder for filament to use all my material waste and regrind my material waste, so I can recycle some of that stuff, because it's like, but there's no like cost economical option that's out on the market right now to grind filament or grind material into new filament without spending like at least $1,000 bucks. And so the big thing is getting whatever your failed prints are, chopping them down back into a pelletized format to re-extrude it into new filament. But I've seen some pretty cool videos out there, and some good tech reviews on the process of what people have done. But I have not taken that leap of faith just yet. So, still kind of working through it. But yeah, I do need to get some of these projects underway. In order to do that, I want to make sure that I have these printers dialed in and calibrated. And these were some fantastic prints, because if you look at the intricacy and detail that's going into at least these desiccant pods, the level of detail is so finite that it's like I don't have any qualms or concerns with one of my other clients' printing needs. It's just a matter of figuring out what material at the lowest price break to print it at. Well, there's another spider. Quite a few spiders crawling around the garage tonight. Yeah, and spiders don't really freak me out that much, so just get rid of them. That way when my wife comes out here, when she comes out here, she will not see a spiderific mess and fumigate the garage, because I'm sure that would go over well. But yeah, I think I've killed like 4 spiders tonight. I don't know how you guys feel about spiders, but part of the ecosystem and balance of life. Yeah, neither here nor there. As long as they remove some of the other creatures that are trying to like destroy our tomato patches or something else that I have in our planter garden in the backyard, they can live. If they're in the garage though, all bets are off. My girls don't like spiders either. Don't get me wrong, if you find one crawling on me, might jump a little bit, and I'm gonna go hunting for it. Alright, so there we go. There are 6 AMS desiccant holders. And I probably won't get into filling these tonight because I don't want to have them just sucking moisture out of the air. But yeah, we need to get on to some more projects here. And some of those I'm actually going to have to print off camera just because they would be for a client, and there is some intellectual property things that are involved with that. So I don't want those things to be exposed or out until time so says to permit. And part of those goes into the electronics that I was working on a couple nights ago. And playing around with a couple different settings and getting some stuff wired in. Oh gosh, what do I need to do next? So anyway, let's talk through the AMS buffer assembly. So if you guys do pick up extra AMSs, the extra AMSs do come with an AMS buffer. And so the way that the AMSs work as they daisy chain together is you have the 4-pin in, and so they have the 4-pin in right there, and then you have the 6-pin out, and that 6-pin out is going, so this is the 4-pin's going to the actual printer itself, and the 6-pin's going to the AMS. We have our filament in, and then we have our filament out to the printer. And so then we have our buffing assembly, which is an absolute requirement when you're looking at running the AMSs, because what it's doing is it's preloading filament towards the printer, and you don't want to have that shock tension on that entire chain loop from hot end assembly through the printer PTFE tubing direct to the AMS. It needs to preload this in order to relieve shock tension. And so it's going to preload filament, and there's a little bit of travel in there, and that's the amount that's generally preloading. And so the AMS hub has some additional circuitry. So if you look at the circuit board that's inside the AMS buffer, that circuit board is very, very small. And so there's a sensor inside here for filament, and then on the AMS buffer, or the AMS hub, excuse me, where you can connect 4 in, it's basically 3 times the size of this unit, and then it's got a 4-port inlet that looks like this, and then it's got a filament sensor for each one of the inlet ports, plus the filament sensor that's inside the buffer assembly. And so there's an additional circuitry that's inside of that. But the way that those 4 filaments flow in is just like a flat into it as a single ramp point, and that single ramp point, for whatever reason, always seems to have issues when I'm doing some really heavy multicolor prints, where there will be filament that will get jammed or will break off between the first sensor at the inlet, so where I'm wiggling my fingers, that first sensor would hit, and then it wouldn't make it to the second sensor, which is inside the buffing assembly. And so after a lot of bit of research, everybody is coming up with just running this 4-way splitter from Bamboo with the AMS buffer, and it's going to work just as good, and if not better, than what it would be with the AMS hub. And I think it's just because it's removing one of the sensors, it's removing some of the circuitry, and then allowing a higher input voltage into each one of the AMSs. And so I tested it out by connecting this up to one of my Bamboos and then connecting all 4 of the AMSs, and it was able to recognize all 4 AMSs, sync all the colors, and I didn't print with it to test PTFE routing, but I am going to be getting into that on one of my other Bamboos. And if my AMS hub fails again, I'm just going to drop this guy back on there, and I've got a couple of them now because I removed the one that initially came with the printer, and I've had 2 that came with my different AMSs that I picked up after the fact. So again, it's like one of my printers, as you can see. I'm gonna pan the camera over, and then you can see it's like, and then we'll pan this one up. So again, this Bamboo right here is running just 3 kilo spools, and this Bamboo is running 4 AMSs. And so a large swath. I've got red, green, blue, white. I've got cyan, yellow, magenta, black. I've got one that's a bank of just different silver and blacks, and then I've got one that's got some snazzy, silky silver and gold for a few different projects, and then a silky rainbow. And so I've been benchmarking back and forth between like Bamboo filament and Matter Hackers filament to get what we would have as the best throughput at the lowest cost price point. And honestly, it's turned out that, you know, running the factory Bamboo with the refillable spools when they're running deals, and it's like I picked up, gosh, 15 kilos of filament at $13.99 for the refill packs a little bit ago, and yeah, super happy with that. And then the eSun for the ABS Plus, and it's crazy because it's like I only selected the ABS Plus, and they sent me ABS Plus high speed for at least one of the colors. I forget which color it was, but I got ABS Plus high speed, and so I'm not sure what the difference is from a material standpoint. So ABS Plus, ABS Plus. This is, yeah, so the fire engine red that I got from eSun, and I picked up 2 spools of it to work on a project. And it's like, so I got my 2 spools of gray, and my gray spools came as regular ABS Plus. My fire engine red came as high speed ABS Plus. My black came as ABS Plus high speed, and my white came as ABS high speed. And so I don't know if they're just working on their a remodel of it, but ABS Plus versus ABS Plus high speed. And so the ABS Plus is there, it allows a lot more flexibility in its filament form. End use part form should be about the same tensile strength and temperature resistance as regular ABS. It's just from a printing standpoint, really ramp up the temperature and the speed on those filaments to get the higher throughput. And so again, I got to do some more calibration and testing with the printers. But yeah, I'm excited to get some more AMSs hooked up, and I might end up going, I want to go with 6 AMSs, and I might go 2, 2, and 2, or have it so that I can just quick disconnect some of these AMSs and have them transfer between units if I'm running multi-printer, multi-color prints. And so yeah, those things are still on the table as to how I'm going to go forward with that. And so interestingly enough, from the Bamboo website, is that I could only buy 2 of these 4-way splitters at one time, and then they would not let me buy a third one. It's like limit 2 per order, and I don't know if that's because of shipping, but what you can do is if you go and you look at the A1, and so if you go with the Bamboo A1 Mini or the Bamboo A1, they also have a 4-way splitter. It looks near identical The only difference is that it has this little plastic notch, and then it has the capability to connect direct into the PTFE SharkBite connector. The only thing that you have to do is this little plastic tab just needs to be removed and then slam the two together. And so this would connect into the AMS buffer assembly on the back of the Bamboo printer. And so I haven't removed the tab yet because I have not had a need to, but I will probably be getting into that here in the very near future. So yeah, pretty excited about getting some of this stuff up and running, and then kind of continuing to work down on some more projects here in the very near future. And now that I have some of these plans solidified for travel, but yeah. And so getting back over to the tap handle design that I was talking about earlier, is here is a version of the tap handle that was created for Gamecraft Brewing Company. And again, this is like a magnetic, so it's like a magnetic badge plate for the discipline of the beer, a magnetic plate for the actual beer type. And then Scott, the owner of the brewery, he wanted the logo affixed versus what I would have for one of my previous generation models. Let's see, they got one over here. Those are all the Gen 1s. If I go to one of my Gen 2s, and so this is the affixed version, is the Gen 3 now. And these things did get warped pretty good. And so I made the mistake of leaving these things out in the car when it was hot one day, and because it's all PLA, and so it warped a little bit. But the logo was magnetically attached, and so the magnets started to fail on me. And then I've got a bunch of these little badges that are printed out based off the discipline of the beer. This is like the generic one. But yeah, I accidentally left these in a bin in the car, and it got hot, and they all warped. And so if they're salvageable, cool. If they're not salvageable, cool. And it's all made with PLA, which is fine. I got to change some of the tolerances on some of these badges anyway, just to get them to print a little bit better. And then I got to pull some of these things out, like the heat set inserts I need to remove out of a couple of these so I can recycle them and get them into working with some of the other prints. But yeah, so it was originally set so that everything was magnetic, but when I go to my cake grater here in the garage, I tend to grab the logo and I pull the logo and it would just pop right off. And so I think that's kind of the same thing that was happening at the brewery. And so changing it from the design of, you know, being this to being something completely different, I'm in the process of working on those and get some of those changes out. And then recycling a bunch of these magnets. I've got a couple other projects that I want to use magnets on, so magnets are always fun to play around with. Magnet towers, yay. Okay, moving right along. So I've been playing around with, like, you know, the logo, and I don't know if this one's gonna work, but I printed out a couple test swatches earlier that I set right here. And so with it being printed in one piece, it's like for the layer height, I was gonna have like 191 changes in layer height here. And so this is all one solid piece up until the point where it gets the stanchion for the logo for the brewery. And then this would be 191 layer changes or filament changes throughout. And it was just like, that's just not feasible. And so my new design is going to be printing the base in one color and then changing over to have the Gamecraft outer logo being yellow printed in one, and then printed out a couple little C's And so testing on sizing, placement, fitment in order to get them so I can just print this with like 2 or 3 color changes versus 191, and then taking one of these templates, insetting the C a little bit more, and just snapping and gluing these into place in order to reduce cost and reduce an exorbitant amount of material waste. Because it's like, gosh, when I was printing it, and it's solid, it's on there. Well, not anymore, but I put a little bit of force on that one, so I might need to change that one too. But that gives me a little template that I can work with now. So I lost a magnet somewhere because it just went flying out. Capating. Oh, there it is. There is Los Magnetos. So I got to change some of the tolerances for the magnets to get the magnet set in a little bit easier and a little bit better. And then getting these so that I can start working a better, faster production flow, and then just snapping these and gluing these into place for the C. And granted, I printed those in white, but you know, it's supposed to be blue. But yeah, if you're in the Orange County area and you want to get a good beer, and they have a ton of different beers on tap, I always recommend having people stop by Gamecraft Brewing Company. Just let them know that Nick sent you for whatever reason. Doesn't have to be any reason at all. Just stop in and get a beer because they have some really, really good beers. But yeah, so we're going to work on a little bit of those design changes, and I did some of the form and fitment. I got to fix it out and see what we got. And then my color bleed through to make sure color bleed through is not going to happen, and whether or not we want to print these in bamboo filament or whether we want to continue down the road of using Matter Hackers branded filament. And Matter Hackers branded filament, you know, in full disclosure, I work for the company, so and I get a filament allotment that I have on a month-over-month basis, and that's where a lot of my silver, it's like one of my favorite materials is actually the silver, the flat silver from Matter Hackers in their build PLA. I pick it up usually in 3 kilo rolls, but I've since transitioned, as I've been getting ready to launch a nonprofit, over to pulling 5 kilo spools down. The problem with the 5 kilo spools is that the 5 kilo spools, we don't have it in silver, we only have it in black, white, and I think red, question mark. And so I've been pulling those down for the 5 kilos so I can work on, you know, printing out a bunch more recorders. A fly landing on me. It's really annoying. At first I thought it was a spider. Like, how did you jump onto my leg from where you were at? Nope, it was just a fly that did not want to get off my leg. So he's flying around the garage somewhere. Yeah, probably attracting spiders, because you know that's the normal gist of things. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to jump over to Fusion 360. So this is the Gen 4 of the C after a couple changes, and so as you can see, the export Gamecraft, tap handle, topper, logo inner, version 4. And so this is the one I'm probably going to be going with. And I want to check, because I didn't really set a specific layer height for this. So 1.875. Yeah, so 1.875. So I want to change that layer height to correlate directly with the layer height that I plan on printing at. And for these, oh gosh, I think I was running a 0.16 mil layer height. And so if we calc that out, 1.875 divided by 0.16. I think I got it that time. I'm not sure. Trying to find a fly carcass now. Yeah. If it lands back on my ankle, I'll just smack it again if I can. It didn't move either. It landed on my ankle and just sat there. So I lifted my leg up and just smacked it. But, okay, so I want to get this back. So it's like I want to find something that's going to work for a layer height. And so, but I want enough layers that's going to be there where I have a non-transparency of the filament itself. And I haven't done a transparency test on some of the blue that I have, but I know that I'm going to at least want 5 layers. And so what I would probably end up doing is 5 times 0.16, 0.16. And so we're looking at 0.8. And so I want to reduce this height down to 0.8. And so, good old math. 1.875 minus 0.8. So I want to reduce this by 0.1075. So we're going to go negative 1.075. Okay. And then if we go back, we're going to check here. And do a quick inspect from here to here. That should be 0.8. Okay, so perfect. So we want that printed in 0.8. That'll be good. I'm going to print a couple of them out here in a few minutes, but what I want to get going is I want to adjust the design for the tap handle. So we're going to save this. And it's going to be the C plate version. Okay. Oh my gosh, it's 1:45 in the morning. How did it get so late so fast? All right. All right, so now that that's saved, there you are, tap handle. And so this is where I was really kind of playing around with the design of, you know, taking the initial mesh off of the other one and then rebuilding it. So I got to rebuild this real quick because I need to inset the C portion of it. So mesh, modify, let's convert mesh, parametric, that's okay. Okay, so now that we have that converted, we're going to go ahead and remove some of these triangles that are on here. I could probably just run a quick simplify mesh on it. But, alright, so what I want to do is I want to check the distance here. So the distance between that line and that line. So that's 1.375. And so I like that level of overhang for the initial design, because if we look at the initial design at 1.375, there's a good bit of separation. And so what I need is I need my top layer of the new C bracket to be 1.375 shorter, and I could probably play around with this a little bit. I do like that spacing as it stands right now, but I could probably drop that down to some sort of multiplier of 0.6, whatever. But I want to press this down. So if we go, what was it, 1.375? Gosh, my brain is just not working tonight. So if I go here to here, 1.375. So I'm going to go back to my calculator because math. 1.375. Actually, I could just do this. I could set this in. So we're going to Now go back to our surface, to our solid, press pull, and you go -0.8. So we're going to inset that by 0.8. Okay. And so there's our new inset. So now we should be able to inspect this. And we got 2.175, which sounds about right. I mean, it is right. So 1.375 plus 0.8. 2.175. So we got good correlation between those two. And so now this is my new distance to which I'm going to print the tap handle in its construct. What I would like to do is I'd like to increase this breakover angle to get us a little bit more rounded. And so grab that. I want to increase this breakover angle back. So we're going to grab this back one first. And we're going to chamfer this in. And I guess it will not let me for whatever reason. I wonder if it'll let me actually do this. It may not let me do this because of some of the other geometries that we have loaded into the model. Yeah, so that starts to dig into the area that we have for the badges. And of course I could adjust all those at the same time too. I had all these gap spaces set between top to here, here to here, and then there to the bottom. So that I'll probably just, maybe I'll just leave it as it is. Maybe just a little bit more. Okay, I said that before. Let's get a little bit of curvature on the back of it. Yeah, that looks fine. Alright, so this probably is going to be our next design. Yeah, so and we've also been debating on, getting the plates and everything set so they don't have to be magnetized to get inset into the unit. Because the magnets they've been fine, but they've proven a little bit unreliable based off of temperature and how I set them in. And so I almost want to go to kind of like a pull tab style, and I have a design for that kind of in mind, similar to what they use on like the honeycomb walls, the honeycomb storage walls. And so I'm going to play around with a little bit of design, but seeing that it is 1:53 in the morning and I've got some other obligations tomorrow, well, I'll probably call it here for tonight, but I do want to get one of these on the printer right quick, and so we're going to, as you can see, we're on version 22 of the tap handle, and so we'll get one of these out. That way I can get this into Scott's hand and then see if he's okay with it, and kind of move forward from there. But yeah, if there's any brewers that are out there that are looking for custom tap handles in a similar fashion, more than happy to kind of get into the weeds and then start talking through design and artwork and whatnot. What I might do is I might decrease the radial of each one of these by like 0.05, just to add a little bit tighter tolerance to the magnets when I set the magnets in. Because that's the problem that I've had right now, is like the magnets will get set in, but the magnets want to like pop out under magnet tension from whatever the magnet source there is. And so we're going to reduce that radius of each one of these by 0.05 mil. And then I'm probably going to inset them ever so slightly so I can actually run some heat on them to get them to inset in. And I have like seen some kind of cool stuff with people that have ran filament over the top of them or filled them in. And so I might play around with that, or I might put like a layer of epoxy over it or something. And so we're going to increase this by we're going to go negative 0.125. I want to get these set in and then kind of put some heat on them to like fold the top of the material over it a little bit. Okay, so you're going to make those holes a little bit deeper, and yeah, that should be fine. Well, good news is that fly never came back, so I'm pretty sure I got it. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and save this. That's going to be GCTH fixed top milestone version 23. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to file. Actually, let me check my models. So that it's only going to export the one. So file, export, whole version 23, export. Alright, so now we're going to jump over to Bamboo Studio. I'm going to open up a new window of Studio right quick. Prep, add, poll 23, open. Now we're going to go ahead and color painting, set a height range, kick this up to, oh gosh, we'll go 1 mil layer height. And just gonna paint this. So we need to change our device actually. So machine 2 to machine 1. Prep. Sync our color list. Resync. Gross. So we're gonna want this in our generic PLA. And then I'm going to go color 6. And 6 all the way up. Alright, so now that we have that set, 0.16 optimal. Support. We are going to generate support for this. Tree auto default. Critical regions only. Slice plate. Gross. Prime tower. And so 5 hours with our prime tower being 55 grams of filament. I hate the prime tower, so we're going to go prime tower. And we're going to turn off the prime tower. I'm going to slice it again. Alright, so we only have one filament change. And we got all of our support material. It's crazy that it's supporting it here, but it's not supporting it here. And it's not supporting any of the other sections. And so let's go back and we're going to go to our supports. And slice that again. And so 4 hours and 19 minutes, but we're going to want to change our filament type from our generic PLA, and we're going to go to our Gold PLA E3D high flow. And then this is also going to be our E3D high flow. And we're going to slice it again. 3 hours and 15 minutes with the high flow. And so we're going to get one of these tests started just to see how well it is going to perform. And then we're going to get some of the little inset badges ready to get placed in later on. And so we're going to go ahead and print this little guy and see how it turns out. And I'm going to bed. So yeah, I only have the one yellow loaded. Hopefully it doesn't fail on me throughout the night. And so I'm going to refresh. And so I've got C3, so C1, 2, 3. I hope I have enough silver loaded right now. I don't know that I do. But we're going to run with it because it's only 72 grams, except we want to change this. Let's go to our strength. I'm going to kick this up to 5 ball loops. I'm going to need 25. So infill. Gyroid. And that's going to significantly increase our printing time. 5 hours and 42 minutes, so we just went up plus 2 hours. But, you know, for a first test with how this is going to look, we'll run with it. don't think we necessarily need to have these guys set. So what we could do is we can go back to our support, and we're going to remove small overhangs. We're going to reslice it. Yeah, that's better. Still quite amorphic. It's crazy because that one's not being supported, but you know, if it deems that it does not need supports, then I will trust Bamboo Studio to play with it and then run with it. And so let's go to our supports. So 2 bottom interface layers and 2 top interface layers, except I don't see any interface layers. Right there's no interface layers that I can tell that it's putting. So you think they would run an interface layer at the base of each one of these, or maybe it's just too small that it's just negating it. I don't know. Alright. We're just going to go ahead and run with it and see how it turns out. Hopefully it looks exactly like this as depicted. Can't say that it will or won't. So C3B2, yep, that's good, that's good. Alright, running with it. I could throw some blue onto the other one and play around with it, but you know, I'm not too worried about it as it stands right now for getting the C's printed out. Then again, we'll still work the magnetics on here for the time being until I get actual like design set over for tabs and pull tabs to further reduce cost and make it easy just to pop in and out. Magnets was a pretty cool idea, but maybe not feasible moving forward. I don't know. Anyway, 2:06 in the morning, and I will catch you guys later on. So, yeah, we covered some bulk printing, some high flow, some design, some personal matters, and then working on GameCraft. All right, later on.